Typology of learners, a digital portfolio. Students learn in different ways. Some are better visual learners, while others are better auditory learners. In the typology of learners, it involves the different disorders of every child, especially their needs and physical illness of the brain that causes a problem in thinking, behavior, energy, or emotion. Other people have difficulty handling special learners because they don't have enough knowledge about them. Mental illnesses affect 19% of the adult population, 46% of teenagers, and 13% of children each year. Other people struggling with their mental health may be in your family, friends, live next door, and people that you met a few hours ago. However, only half of those affected receive treatment, often because of the stigma attached to mental health. Learners with intellectual and developmental disabilities, or IDDs. Cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy causes impaired movement associated with abnormal reflexes, abnormal posture, involuntary movements, unsteady walking, and their eyes don't focus on the same object. Epilepsy. It is a central nervous system or neurological disorder in which brain activity becomes abnormal, causing seizures or periods of unusual behavior, sensations, and sometimes loss of awareness. Down syndrome, or trisomy 21. Down syndrome is a condition in which a person has an extra chromosome. Down syndrome is a genetic disorder also called trisomy 21. It includes certain birth defects, learning problems, and facial features. A child with Down syndrome also may have heart defects and problems with vision and hearing. How severe or mild these problems are varies from child to child. Down syndrome is one of the most common genetic birth defects. It affects about 1 in 800 babies. Adults with Down syndrome may live about 60 years, but this can vary. Learners with learning disability. Dyslexia. People with dyslexia often struggle with reading, spelling, understanding language. They hear or expressing themselves clearly when speaking or writing. Both oral and written language are affected. Dyslexia is the most common cause of reading, writing, and spelling difficulties. People with dyslexia and other learning disabilities are as smart or smarter than other people. They simply learn in a different way. Dyscalculia, which means inability to calculate, is the most widely used term for disabilities in arithmetic and mathematics. Dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is a neurological disorder of written expression that impairs writing ability and fine motor skills. It is a learning disability that affects children and adults and interferes with practically all aspects of the writing process, including spelling, legibility, word spacing and sizing, and expression. Learners with physical disability. Hearing loss. Hearing loss is a type of sensory deprivation known as auditory deprivation. It delayed language or literacy skills. Visual impairment. Visual impairment is a term experts use to describe any kind of vision loss, whether it's someone who cannot see at all or someone who has partial vision loss. Speech impairment. A child with a speech sound disorder is unable to say all of the speech sounds in words. This can make the child's speech hard to understand. People may not understand the child in everyday situations. For most children, the cause of the speech sound disorder is unknown. Gifted learners. Types of giftedness. Type 1. The successful. They are the students who have learned the system and are well adjusted to society with a generally high self-concept. They are obedient, display appropriate behavior, and are high achievers, therefore loved by parents and teachers. Type 2. The divergently different or challenging. They are the divergently who possess high levels of creativity, but they get frustrated if the school system does not recognize their abilities. Type 3. The underground. It refers to gifted students who deny their talents or hide their giftedness in order to feel more included with a non-gifted peer group. Their changing needs are often in conflict with the expectations of teachers and parents. Type 4. The dropouts. They are angry with adults and with themselves because the system has not met their needs for many years and they feel rejected. They may express this anger by acting depressed and withdrawn or by acting out and responding defensively. Type 5. The double label. Gifted children who are also physically or emotionally handicapped or learning disabilities. Feel discouraged, frustrated, rejected, helpless, isolated. Deny having difficulty, claim to be bored. Use humor to demean, are impatient and critical, unhappy about performance, intellectualize to cope with feelings of inadequacy, often unidentified, ignored, schools focus on weaknesses rather than nurture. Type 6. The autonomous learners. They are positive self-concepts because their needs are being met, they are successful, and they receive positive attention and support for their accomplishments as well as for who they are. Learners with social-emotional disorders. Anxiety disorders. It refers to specific psychiatric disorders that involve extremely fear or worry, panic disorder, and panic attacks. Social anxiety disorder, separation anxiety, increased heart rate, and shakiness. Obsessive-compulsive disorder. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, is a mental illness that causes repeated unwanted thoughts or sensations, or obsessions, or the urge to do something over and over again, or compulsions. Neurodevelopmental disorders. Children with neurodevelopmental disorders can experience difficulties with language and speech motor skills, behavior, memory learning, or other neurological functions. Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD, is a complex developmental condition that involves persistent challenges in social interaction, speech and nonverbal communication, and restricted repetitive behaviors. ADHD, or Attention Deficit and Hyperactivity Disorder. Children with ADHD may have trouble paying attention, controlling impulsive behaviors. They may act without thinking about what the result will be, or overly active. Trauma and stressor-related disorders. Trauma and stressor-related disorders are a group of emotional and behavioral problems that may result from childhood traumatic and stressful experiences. Learners with chronic illnesses. Asthma. In a person with asthma, the airways are overly sensitive to certain things such as allergies, viral infections, cold air, exercise, and smoke that can trigger or bring on asthma symptoms. Allergy. A damaging immune response by the body to a substance, especially pollen, fur, a particular food, or dust to which it has become hypersensitive. Diabetes. Diabetes is a disease in which your blood glucose or blood sugar levels are too high. Learners in difficult circumstances. Homeless children. Poverty, hunger, exposure to parental depression or domestic violence may precede the loss of their home and contribute to the adverse outcome seen in these displaced children. Homeless children are more likely to experience physical and behavioral health problems with less access to medical, mental, and dental care. More than a quarter of homeless children report having witnessed violence, and more than half have evidence of anxiety and depression. Abandoned children. A child who was abandoned by a parent or caregiver may have mood swings or anger later in life. These behaviors can alienate potential intimate partners and friends. A child's self-esteem can also be affected by lack of parental support. Children whose parents cannot or are not able to take care of them. Vulnerability of children without parental care is caused by lack and or inadequate family environment. These children are usually emotionally unstable. They frequently develop conduct disorders and have low self-esteem. Children separated from parents. A child may feel a sense of loss. Separation from a parent can mean you lose not only your home but your whole way of life. Fearful about being left alone. If one parent can go, perhaps the other will do the same. Angry at one or both parents for the relationship breakdown. Migrant and refugee children. Worldwide, nearly 31 million children have been forcibly displaced at the end of 2018. Refugee children, particularly those without documentation and those who travel alone, are also vulnerable to abuse and exploitation. Street children. Children living on the streets experience high levels of stress and of physical and sexual abuse and psychological trauma as a result of living on the street. working children. Child labor can mean exploitation, long hours, harsh conditions, and a little chance to develop. A student who is permitted to work while studying and use the money earned to pay for their studies. Trafficked children. Child trafficking occurs when children are taken away from safety and exploited. Children who are trafficked are often forced into some form of work, used for sex, or simply sold. Children in bondage. Child slavery is the enforced exploitation of a child for someone else's gain, meaning the child will have no way to leave the situation or person exploiting them. Childhood should be a time to grow, learn, play, and flourish in safety. But an estimated 10 million children around the world don't have the chance. Instead, they wake up each day trapped in modern slavery. Children in prostitution. Children have to bear everything customers do to their bodies, even endure sadomasochistic or violent sex. These children work on the streets or in establishments such as brothels, clubs, massage parlors, bars, hotels, or restaurants. UNICEF estimates that every year 1 to 2 million children under 18 are exploited sexually in prostitution. In Asia alone, the number comes close to 1 million. The number of children who work in prostitution is largest in India, 400 to 500,000, and in Thailand, 200,000. Children of sex workers. Children of drug users and sex workers can face unique risk, stigma, and discrimination. But both child vulnerability and resilience are associated in the drug use literature with the physical and mental health of parents and family contexts. Children of prisoners. Having a parent in prison can have an impact on a child's mental health, social behavior, and educational prospects. Children affected in war and conflict. Children are exposed to situations of terror and horror during war, experiences that may leave enduring impacts in post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. Children are especially vulnerable to abuse, exploitation, and trafficking during emergencies and armed conflicts. Children affected by natural disasters. Disasters can damage children's physical health. Children may be injured or killed. They may also suffer from disasters as malnutrition caused by disruptions of food supply or diarrheal illness caused by contaminated water. Disasters can interrupt children's education by displacing families, destroying schools, and pushing children into the labor force to help their families make ends meet in straitened times. Children can suffer psychological harm from damage to their homes and possessions, from migration, from the grip of losing loved ones, from seeing parents or caregivers undergo stress, from neglect and abuse, and from breakdowns in social networks, neighborhoods, and local economies. Children affected by HIV or AIDS. Children from families living with HIV or AIDS often have to deal with psychosocial stress, an ill caregiver, reduced parenting capacity, a shift in family structure, financial deprivation, and stigma and discrimination. children belonging to the ethnic and religious minorities, and other minority communities. Discrimination against minorities has frequently led to their privation of nationality, resulting in statelessness. Statelessness, minority children may have to work from a young age, lived in insecure housing arrangements, or suffer harassment. Children in institutional care. Young children in institutional care are more likely to suffer from poor health, physical underdevelopment, and deterioration in brain growth, developmental delay, and emotional attachment disorders. Children with conflict with the law refers to anyone under 18 who comes into contact with the justice system as a result of being suspected or accused of committing an offense. The prevalence of juvenile delinquency is primarily due to poverty, according to Philippine National Police, or PNP, considering that theft is a common offense committed by children. Children who are victims of crimes. A child who is a victim of crime at his or her early stages of life is most vulnerable. He or she is dependent on others and physically weaker than adults.